Have you ever wondered how to get that clean, professional vocal sound in your tracks? In this video, I'm breaking down the exact vocal chain I used for my latest release, Fill My Void, for the Wharf and RC project. Whether you're working with high-end gear or if you're just getting started, I'll walk you through the 4 steps to making vocal sounds polished and ready for release. In this video, we're going to talk about tuning, cleaning, compressing, and making them bigger with unique effects. So these are the same techniques I use to shape my vocal performance into the final mix, and I'm going to break that entire record down here in this video. If you're brand new here, welcome to the Self-Made Artist series. I'm Worf, and this series is for the artists who refuse to just make music and hope for the best. It's for the creatives who know that in today's world, being an artist means being more than just a musician. It means understanding your brand. It means understanding your visuals, your marketing, and your sound at every level. I built my career by learning everything I could about media production, from music to visuals to branding, and now I'm sharing that knowledge with you. If you want to take full control of your artistry and build something truly independent, you're in the right place. Alright, let's briefly go over the main things about making your vocal sound proper in these first 4 steps. The first one is tuning, and this is getting the vocal pitch perfect. One of the first things I do after recording a vocal take is tuning it. Even if you have great pitch, slight inconsistencies can make your vocals feel off in a dense mix. There are 2 main ways to approach this. The first one, and what I start with all the time, is auto-tuning. You can use real-time or post-processing. It works well if you're going for a more stylized sound, like a modern electronic or pop vocal. And then manual tuning, which we usually do after auto-tuning. And you use something like Melodyne for this, which gives you full control over each individual note. This is great if you want to keep a natural feel while correcting only the necessary parts. For this vocal, for Fill My Void, I used a subtle amount of tuning, just enough to make sure every note was locked in without making it sound robotic. It's very important to match the key of your song correctly when using any pitch correction, or things are going to sound unnatural really fast. After I did that, I ran it through Melodyne just to clean it up even more. So step 2 was cleaning, which is removing unwanted frequencies and noise. Before we get into compression or effects, we need to clean up the vocal. Raw vocals always have unwanted noise, harsh frequencies, or low-end rumble that can muddy up your mix. Here's what I focus on. The first one is high-pass filtering. So I roll off the low end, usually about 80 to 100 hertz, to remove any sort of room rumble and mic stand vibrations. Second thing you want to jump into immediately is de-essing. This reduces harsh S and T sounds that can become distracting when they're compressed. And the third is resonance control. Using an EQ, I cut out harsh or nasal frequencies that might be fighting the mix. A clean vocal is easier to process later on, so I make sure to get rid of any distractions before moving forward. The third thing I'm going to show you in this record is the compression techniques, and this is how I kept the vocal consistent and powerful. Compression is one of the biggest factors in making vocals sound professional. The goal here is to balance the vocal performance so that no words get lost in the mix. For this track, I used a combination of light compression. For Fill My Void, I used a combination of light compression on the way in. If you're recording with an interface like the Apollo Twin X, like I have here, you can add a little compression before the vocal even hits your DAW. We also use serial compression. Instead of one heavy compressor, I use multiple compressors with lighter settings. This keeps the vocal smooth without making it sound overprocessed. And then let's talk about fast attack versus slow attack, because it's important. A fast attack helps control peaks, while a slower attack lets more of the natural vocal energy shine through. The right balance of compression ensures the vocal sits perfectly in the mix without sounding squashed or lifeless. The last thing that we're going to talk about is making it bigger, making it sound larger than life, and adding unique effects. So once you have a clean vocal, well balanced, it's time to make it pop. This is where effects like reverb, delay, and modulation come in. For Fill My Void, and for all vocals I use for that matter, I have a very unique way of processing my vocals with effects, and I'll show you that in here. I almost always use a mono plate reverb on top of a hall reverb. Now, when it comes to vocal effects, I have a unique way of doing it. Because I have a good computer, I actually don't have any send tracks in my project, but I do make my sends in Ableton groups or instrument groups that we have in Ableton Live, and I'll break all of that down in here. The main point is we want to make sure that once the vocal is cleaned and balanced, we're making it larger than life, and we can do this with literally an infinite amount of plugins, so it's up to the taste of the producer at that point. All of the effects that you can put on a vocal are what give a vocal its final identity in the mix. So the trick is really just to enhance the vocal without drowning it in effects. Here we are in Fill My Void. This record just came out. I think we just passed 10,000 streams on Spotify, and it's done really well on Instagram, and we even did a crazy bunch of content like this. For each release. As you know, we like to go really hard with our releases, making a cinematic story along with the music that we actually make, because the visuals, as I preach about here all the time, are extremely, extremely important. So yeah, it did really well. So today I wanted to use, because I operate both brands, I wanted to use the opportunity to make this one of the Self-Made Artist Series videos, just to go once again more in depth into the audio and the vocal mixing. I do get a lot of comments here at home from people that I go out with and I see at the venues who always comment on my vocals, so this is how we do it. So first thing you'll notice is my instrumentals are my beat is totally separated from the vocals. They're all into a submaster group, but I process the beat separately and then the vocals and then all of them together. Basically, the one thing that you have to know at the end of it is to slot your vocals into your beat. I use something like Soothe to sidechain it really, really subtly so that while the beat's playing, I'm carving out very particular places for where the vocal is going to sit. Now, you're also doing that here in the mix as you're mixing the vocals, but this just gives you an extra layer of allowing that vocal to sit more up front. And that is a pattern of our sound and the uniqueness of the Worf and RC sound. RC is such a brilliant high soprano vocal, and I like to have it more up front than behind, but that's personal preference. Anyway, so let's just play these real quick. Here we're going to play the hook just by itself. Great. So you'll notice that I have a little hook group and the second bit, because I processed these a little bit slightly differently. I separated them like this and added them to a group. I add them to a group because a lot of the times I'll throw a pop delay or something, which is just basically like, I guess I didn't on this one, but I will take this, put a full wet Echo Boy with some tuning or something like that, and just, now you have your pop. Anyway, that's irrelevant for now. Let's first talk about this one. I have a high soprano tune, and I have the alto. The trick to a big, crazy good vocal is layers, and differences in the range of the voice. So the more times you can layer this up, the better, for the most part. So you'll notice I have nothing on these right now. on the actual audio chain, and that's because I had already gone in and tuned it slightly with autotune, and then ran it through Melodyne after, and then froze and flattened it. Now, most of the time, I keep the raw up here in its own chain turned off, so I can refer back to it if I ever need to. I work with vocals a lot, so in this particular case, I deleted it altogether. It is a more destructive way of mixing, but sometimes you're playing with CPU issues, but by the end of a big project, so sometimes you have to cut power where you can, draining from the project. Anyway, so just briefly, what we had done from the beginning, once the vocal has came in, and something else I should probably show you, is I use console, which is UAD's mixing console, so anytime I go to record, and most of the time I'll have a preamp that sounds good for RC's voice. I like the Manly Vox Box, but I've worked with RC for years and I know what sounds good on her voice for the preamp, so it provides a little bit of a color. A little bit of an EQ cut here, just taking out any rumble at 80. A little bit of compression, and there will usually be some tuning right here. Also, I record on the way in. Now with the compressor, when the voice is coming in, I'm not reducing any gain by anything more than -2. Especially on the way in, you want to be super, super subtle with it. Anyway, let's get back into this. So already when that vocal came in, it was balanced better, a little bit tuned, and then I tuned it further after that. So then Autotune and Melodyne went on it. If you want me to do more in-depth on Melodyne and how to sculpt vocals really, really well, you can let me know in the comments and I'll cover that. I could do a crazy Melodyne in-depth video on that. But for now, just imagine we tuned it ever so slightly and then went into Melodyne. So once that was done, I had two versions of it. This one actually has vocal synth on it, the higher version. And that all goes up to a hook group just for that particular piece with some slight glue compression going on just to keep it together ever so slightly again. Goes up one more time into the main hook group, which is where the majority of the processing is actually coming from. So we talked in this video about the different steps that you got to take. The beginning was tuning, which we had already done over here. The second one is cleaning and sculpting. So we're taking out more of that room noise. RC again has a high soprano, so a lot of this down here doesn't register in her voice and it's just rumble. And it's just additional noise that I didn't particularly want in the record, so I carved it out. Now, at the beginning, you're only using subtractive EQ. You're not doing any additive EQ. All you're doing is removing stuff you don't want so you can balance it and then add after. So there was a cut here. And you can tell immediately. I mean, it's subtle, and if you have a good pair of headphones, you'll be able to tell immediately that it gave it so much more room by taking away. Now, some people might feel that that's a little weird. Taking things away makes it feel more in the mix, but yeah, that's the way that it works. This is usually rumble and mud here in the 200, 300 range, so I'll just bypass that so you can see the difference. It feels starting to feel really muddy there. And one more in the 3K, which is kind of harsh. Great. Second step I went in to do, second step in the group chain anyway, is some multiband compression. Once again, pulling a little bit more of that mud down and just sculpting it ever so slightly. With your FabFilter Pro MB, I'm manually changing the attack and release time of these particular bands so I can sculpt where the vocal is going to hit and where the where the different frequency ranges of her voice is going to hit properly. After that, I actually went into soft tube. UAD's TubeTech CL1B, and this is your dynamic compressor, making the entire thing compressed into the beat properly and set the attack and release times properly. So here's a AB of that. So you feel this, it's all just kind of like up here. It's not really playing too much with the beat. If I turn solo off, turn it back on. I'm doing this a little bit backwards, so let me just turn these off for a second. I'll just go back over that because I haven't gone too far yet. First thing was first was the EQ. One thing I also want to point out, for the purpose of this video, I am purposefully soloing the vocals so you can hear the differences. I highly recommend that when you're mixing vocals, when you're mixing anything for that matter, always have the beat playing. Unless you're just going to solo it real quick just to make sure you know what you're listening for. When you're mixing, everything is in context. You could tweak something in solo because you think that it needs to remove some of this or remove some of that, but in reality, you have no idea until the rest of the elements are playing inside the record. So mix with everything playing. Everything is contextual. You need to be hearing all the elements. You need to be listening to the beat and knowing that these are the sounds that are playing in the vocals range, and I need to be able to mix that vocal around or on top of or behind or whatever it is, but you can't do that unless you hear what's going on in the beat. Anyway, let's continue. Cleaning by itself. Again, all we've done is tuned and melodined at this point. EQ. Can already feel that it's given you a little bit more presence by taking stuff away. Subtractive EQ is so important. Now into the Pro MB. Again. Great. Dynamic compressor. Give it a lot more balance, a lot more dynamic to the entire process. Now, we're going into some coloration here. Oxide tape. This is a great one for RC's voice, another plugin by UAD. And it's through trial and error and many years working with RC, I've really, really enjoyed this one on her voice. That being said, every vocalist and every vocal performance is different. So sometimes you slap a plugin on and go, oh, this is for her voice, but the song totally dictates something completely different. So don't just always reach for the same one. Try a few of them. Anyway, without saturation. And with adding a bunch of extra harmonics. Off. Cool. So I'm a pretty big believer that for these initial steps of you making the vocal, your cleaning, your balancing, compression, and your dynamics and saturation, you really shouldn't need more than 5 plugins. When you get into the really creative stuff, which we're just about to get into now, you can go nutty with it, especially when you do it in parallel like I'm about to show you. So let's do that. You can either use a send track, which you almost always see down here, or a return track, which is where you would throw a reverb on the return track in 100% wet, so that's the only thing coming out of that channel. And then over here you would feed your gain or however much of that plugin that you want on top of your vocal. Now I do things a little bit differently because I like to see my automation lines, all of them together. So what I do is in Ableton, we have something called an audio effect rack, which means I can take something like a saturator, and now if I hit Command G or Control G on a Windows and hit a new chain, I can go, this is my dry channel, and this is my saturation channel. And now we're parallel processing. So you could parallel process until the end of time, as long as your computer is powerful enough and you have enough CPU to handle big things like this. So I am, maybe I don't want to delete my, oxide. I am fortunate that I've done well enough for myself to get a really good, powerful computer, so I can make parallel processing chains like crazy. So let's just go down the line here and talk about each one and maybe what it's doing. So let's look at it this way. Your vocal is here on this channel, and it's coming out this audio channel. It's then going up to my hook channel. The audio, once it's done there, it's going to go up to this hook group and feed into a little bit of compression. Then it's going to go up to another group that's containing both the first and second part of the hook, and then it's going to go through the subtractive EQ, it's going to go through the MB, it's going to go through the dynamic tube tech CL1B, it's going to go into the oxide tape saturator, and then it's going to come out this dry channel. But it's also in parallel. Now that signal chain is split, and it's going to come out the dry channel, and now it's going to come out. Here's my dry channel. Now, because I split the channel, now it's going to come out my hall reverb. Off. And again, I like it because I can put my automation lines here and I can see them all together. So basically what's happening is it's taking your one signal chain and then splitting it into two. And then what you can do is you can split it into 3, then 4, then 5, and sky's the limit of what you put at the end of that channel. So you could go nuts. You could go a hall reverb into a distortion, into another compressor, into a subtractive EQ, and it doesn't really matter. Again, assuming you have enough CPU power, but it doesn't really matter because what you're going to do here on this side to not blow out your sound is you're just going to turn it down. So you're basically layering on top, and for the photo people, a low opacity image on top, or less dry wet. Like you go 10% just by changing the volume. And the more you do this, the more interesting the vocal is going to become. It's going to sound more unique, and the more those frequencies of that vocal are changing throughout the entire song, the more interesting and, in my opinion, replayability that record is going to have. Because the more interesting but not overdoing it you process into your vocal, the listener is going to love it and be intrigued by it and really never be able to put their finger on it because it's morphing and changing, and it's automating and moving, so it never really stays the exact same way, which is a huge plus. So, with reverb. So, here was my hall reverb. So now we have the dry channel with no reverb on it, and then a hall reverb in parallel. Let's move on now to a slap delay. And if you want, here. It's almost inaudible to the ear when I turn it off. But it is doing quite a bit. Now we have a 1-to-1 delay. It's not here in this part, but there is a 1-to-1 delay. And then there's a mono plate delay. So this is my super plate with the utility after in mono, and then just a little boost here and cut here on the mono, because now it's right down the center. Do not skip on the mono plate reverb. You can tell immediately how much that it's doing, even down at negative 12. It has given it its entire space in the mix right here. This one is hugely, hugely important. Next, there's another Echo Boy, another delay at 1/16 notes. Again, very subtle. And one last one. This is a plugin that I like a lot, and it's just for randomizing. As I just said, the more you can change that vocal, the better. And when you turn it down low, great, and you can sculpt out the frequencies you don't like of it. That's the best thing that you can do. Magic Dice by Baby Audio is sick because it's like totally random. You have no idea what's happening underneath the hood. Now, I don't use this as my main delay, but I do use it as something to constantly make it unique in a area of a song that you feel like, it needs something. What is it? Parallel Magic Dice. Done. So, now that those are kind of walked through, the last thing that's on here is a sidechain to the kick, which gives all house music songs their up and down. Pretty obvious what it does. Every time the kick jumps in, the vocal's going to just duck ever so slightly, and it's going to create this up and down bouncy groove to it. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. 'Cause if I do, it overflows. House music really, really doesn't work without this. It's going to be on most of your sounds outside of the drum rack. So, yeah, anyway. That should be an obvious one for you. So let's see what we did. Here's everything off. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. On. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. Love me. Off with the beat. Love me, drag me, fill my void for me. Love me, drag me, fill my void. And everything together. So, there's one other thing. There's actually a couple other things that I want to talk about. So, let's dive into that. So, there's a little break section here that goes like this. So once again, we did slight tuning, we did some melodyning, and then what I had done, just like the parallel tracks are happening up here, because once again, all of these are going up through that main group as well. What we did down here is got the main vocal, which is the one that you just heard. We duplicated it down here and put in another baby audio plugin called Humanoid and gave it this. And on top of it together. And then the bottom one is again in parallel, an Echo Boy that's just providing that delay that's just going to keep going and going and going. So that same processing that we did on all of these, I wanted them to stay in the same world. Now I did change the automation, which I won't go into all of the automation changes as it transfers from the drop vocals or the hook to the break vocals. But we are changing with automation different gain values and different parameters from the different plugins that are in here. But the thing to take away here is this vocal on its own, I felt like it needed more. I felt like it needed some sort of additional thing going on, so I added this demonic voice, turned it down to -10 here, just like you're doing up here with the parallel processing. We're parallel processing down here, just now separated from group to group, and one more time with its own delay. Now, that's not all that's done with the break. We also had one set of wides. Now, sometimes we do 4 sets of wides, 6 sets of wides, 8 sets of wides, really depends on the record, but because I had a lot of vocal effects going on, like this demonic one I was just showing you, we opted to just do 1 set, and for us that was okay for this particular record. So, once again, tuned, melodyne, but one other thing that we did here, which I recommend on all backing vocals, is we use something like Vocaline Project. So if you throw a Vocaline onto your back vocal, you can take this plugin, set where you want it to go, so in this particular case it would have been the break, and you capture it, and now it just took the vocal, the placement from up here, and it's going to snap it, the back. So if the back was sung not exactly perfect, which they're never going to be sung exactly on point unless it's a crazy vocalist. I mean, Arcee's fantastic, but there's a degree of human, I'm not even going to call it error, but human difference when you record vocal takes. So something like Vocaline, you can go in and you can change how tight or how loose that backing vocal sits to the actual main vocal. So this is a hugely important one. Now you don't see it on here because once I auto-tune, melodyne, and then Vocaline set it to where I want, I'll go in and freeze and flatten it. So it is actually up here with the frozen and flat ones, the tuning and then the Vocaline project. Anyway, what you're going to want to do with backs is we do, if you're doing 2 backs, we put 2 same tone, so the same way she sang the hook, just to make it bigger, and then you turn them down on the channel. But make sure, because they're back vocal, you want 1 on the right, 1 on the left. If you're only working with 2, I hard pitch them, or I hard pan them, sorry. 1 hard left, 1 hard right. Now if we were going to do 4 backing tracks, we'd probably take these same ones, these same octave backs, and we would maybe put one 45 left and 45 right, and then we would do a higher octave to the hook vocals, to the main vocal, and we would pitch that 50 to the right and 50 to the left. And then you have a stack of vocals that are tuned and then timed with something like Vocaline, so it's bang on. And then you have a really big, wide, beefy vocal. Takes up a lot of space, really, really beautiful. Now, background vocals. Sometimes you can go a little bit more in depth with them. Sometimes you want them a little bit dirty. with these, let's just turn them off again. So here's your backs. Throw the brake in. So I put a Pro Q3 on it, cutting out the bottom part and the top part. We put a glue compressor on it, just to hug them ever so slightly so that the difference in volume between the two takes are more even. Now I did go in and manually gain stage them just a little bit, but this is just going to give you a nice additional layer of just hugging it so it stays all together. Now I put a little creative effect on it, micro shift. Micro shift focusing up at around 1300 hertz, which is usually the brightness area of a vocal. A little bit of detuning and kept it loose. I wanted it to be dirtier, so this is why we left it that way. And the last thing, like all the other ones, is a reverb. And a good idea is to sculpt your reverb the way that you like it. Again, in context with the entire beat, so I understand what I'm cutting and what I'm listening to as I'm cutting it to fit it into the beat. So here's it without any effects, minus the tuning and melodyne and placement. And now here's all of it together. Beauty. So that was all done for the break. And the last thing that we put in here, and we actually put this in probably a couple weeks after, because we had all the main parts and it felt a little empty. It didn't have anything as it came into the next drop. So RC had this idea, which I loved, to go in and add something else that made sense with the record. Now, this one has a lot more to it, but let's turn it all off for now. Let's turn everything off for now so you can hear what's happening. Now this is in its own chain. We recorded it differently because we wanted it to feel a little bit like a different part, a little bit more telephony, behind in the back kind of idea. So this is what it sounded like without. EQ. I'll rep through this one. Sculpting. Some de-essing on those S's. Multi-band on a little bit of mud that I felt was taking up too much. Here's a dynamic compressor, fitting it properly. Oxford's inflator, just beefs it up ever so slightly. Then we use Murder Melodies, vocal effect. This gave it its telephone and its character and its uniqueness. Then your compressor sidechain, making it bounce. And then last, a limiter. Just bringing it down ever so slightly, just keeping it here. And then all the effects. So for the effects on this one, we had super plate, again in mono. It's crazy how much, even at negative 19 decibels, it's still giving it its space in the mix. It's beautiful. And then a doubler. This Isotope's vocal doubler. Effect only, so 100% wet. Your hall reverb. The hall reverb has some sculpting. It has more sculpting. And a roll off of the highs, pretty heavy one. This is a real trick. If you want some movement with your hall reverb, throwing something like Mondo Mod on it with a very small range is just going to make that reverb go like this ever so slightly. It's just going to, depending on where you set this range. So it's moving it. It's not keeping it the same as if the singer was in this particular room that gives you this particular reverb and she was just a statue when she sang right there. But if she's moving around the room ever so slightly, it's going to change where that reverb is going to bounce off the walls. So anything that you can do, subtly, of course, the mix is down to 27. It's very subtle so that it's just constantly changing again so that the listener can't just go, I hear it, I've heard it, I'm done, now I'm bored of it. If you can keep changing those frequencies, the longevity of your song, in my opinion, is going to last. And then the very last thing, as I move on, was a black ash, and this is a parallel compressor. I'm cranking this thing and then turning it down. So my process here is a parallel compressor is just going to make it fit in the mix so much better and just so much more balanced as you get to the end. Now, to each their own on what kind of vocal they're working with or when or if you really need this. But I turn this all the way to 0, crank the attack, crank the ratio, crank the gain so it's getting the most color out of this compressor, and then slowly with my arrow keys going, okay, now I'm slowly feeding it in until it's at a place where I'm just, okay, sweet, it's perfect. So off. You just see it's just brought it right up to the front. And that's it. That was literally all that we did on the Fill My Void vocals. Again, we spoke about once those vocals are done, they go up to the instrument or the beat group, and they're slotted here. If I bypass it, and as I turn back on the bypass, or I enable the plugin, listen to the beat in relation to the voice and how the voice just sinks into it just ever so slightly. And now you feel like you're inside it. Perfect. Oh, and I guess one more thing that might be important to point out, like all group channels that have a piece of audio inside them, a little glue compression goes a very long way in keeping them all together. So big long attack, very short release, small ratio, I'm just tickling it. But I'm just keeping it all together. All right, well, that's the breakdown of my vocal chain for Fill My Void. We went through tuning the vocals for precision, cleaning up unwanted frequencies and noise, compressing to get a consistent and powerful take, and finally adding unique effects to make the vocal stand out in the mix. If this helped you, let me know in the comments what part of the process you want me to go deeper on. And if you're an artist looking for help with mixing, branding, or getting your music out the right way, hit me up. You can find me on Instagram at generation.mg or visit generationmediagroup.ca. See you in the next one. Peace.